Welcome to our series special, a unique segment of Narratives and Nightcaps, the book club podcast where we dive into the details of a book series, pair it with a nightcap, and leave a book review. It's Jordan.
Emily.
And I'm Bree.
Oh my goodness. The first series special ever. Not just of 2025, but ever. I feel like it is a very momentous occasion.
I am super excited, and I just have to say that because I know we did Crescent City last year, and then Jordan, you pitched this one for us to go through this year, and I will take every series recommendation from either of you ladies without question now.
Oh,
I'm already in book 3. We all know how Crescent City ended last year. That I
you just
through it, so I am a full convert.
past us.
Anytime, I'm just going to tell you now, listeners, anytime Bree or Jordan come up with a series that we should read, just do it. Don't ask questions. Just thank yourself later and just jump right in.
That is high praise.
This one's all Jordan. It was on my TBR for a long time, but it was kind of intimidating because you look at the number of books in the series and you think, oh man, do I really have time for that? And then knowing we were going to do this, yeah, all of us. Knowing we were going to do this, I was like, you know what? I should probably start book 1 early so that I can make sure I read
Get a
it.
jump on things.
I just want to make sure I finish it in time, and I'm on book 3.
Yeah, it's so funny. I said the same thing. Bree, sorry, Jordan, to cut you off. Same thing. I was like, I should just start this now. And I'm also about halfway through book 3. So
I've totally started book 2.
right.
It's fine. It's fine. We're all fine. Oh, I'm so encouraged to hear that, and I appreciate the praise and that you guys have enjoyed this suggestion. So yes, we're going to get into what we're reading. We're going to get into our pairing for this one, but first I thought we'll introduce the book and then just kind of share a little bit of high-lows before we get into our plot summary, talking points, and kind of what we thought. So yes, listener, we did From Blood and Ash by Jennifer Armentrout. We will be hopefully doing the Blood and Ash Flesh and Fire series. Those of you fantasy lovers out there kind of know this series, like they shared, is a commitment. That is for dang sure. But it is hopefully a very, very worthy commitment. And so far, I can attest to that. I don't know. You two are in book 3, so you tell me.
I'm loving it, but I will reserve all thoughts for future episodes on 2 and 3.
There you go.
I'm really focused that I was like, okay, you're going to do this and you're only going to talk about book 1, nothing else.
This is going to be really hard for you both, huh? Okay.
I feel okay about it.
I'm mentally prepared. I have my notes of like what I can and cannot say.
Well, Emily, why don't we start with you? What are some highs and lows before we get into the book, since the listeners have last heard from you?
Yeah, gosh, I think for me, the high and the low is kind of one and the same. I think as I've shared on my platform, Books and Bottles, I'm expecting baby 2.
Yay!
So the high is that I'm officially 32 weeks, but that means the low is that those listeners...
You're officially 32 weeks.
I'm officially 32 weeks, which I'm moving a little slower. Naps are my friend, and I'm in the final mile, but that last mile is all uphill. So,
Aw, and what about for you, Emily? Or Bree?
I mean, a big high for me is that this podcast is continuing into year 3 with you both. And yeah, and I'm just like, I'm super, super fortunate and grateful that that's happening, because toward the end of the year, when I was going through a lot of personal shifts and stuff, there was definitely a moment of like, what's going to happen with this? And so a definite high is just how things have really worked out and that we get to continue this journey together.
I'm so encouraged to hear that. I know. Yeah, it's been, you two have been such a light. This entire just bookish community and this podcast have been such a light. So I agree with that. Cheers to that.
What about you?
So yes, my husband is officially graduated with his master's. We had a little graduation celebration for him yesterday, and that was a lot of fun. He was really encouraged by that, so I will take that as my high for sure. And yeah, I'm not too sure that there's really too many lows at the moment.
That would be a
I'm
high.
almost
We'll take it.
Yeah, yeah. No, we're gonna take it, especially rolling through 2025. I guess maybe my low is, like, how fast it's all going. It's already pretty wild how
Mhm.
fast it's going, you know? More than halfway through my training program at work and grateful to be going through that. That'll wrap up at the beginning of April, but yeah. So, feeling pretty good, and it's a great time to be a reader, listener. If you're listening to this, you're probably listening after you've read Onyx Storm because that's on its way out in less than 24 hours. So, we're all chomping at the bit. At least I know I am.
Probably gonna have to have my husband hide it till the weekend so that I don't that's what
So you
happened
make it through the work week?
Yes, oh, because I can't get distracted, and I need sleep. Last year or yeah, when Iron Flame came out, so I guess that was, more than a year ago, he hid the book from me
I think
until
you told us about this, if I
yeah.
remember.
You know
So
what's
I think that'll have to happen again. I don't trust myself.
what's funny? I read the Iron Flame and Fourth Wing before my husband did, and then he listened to him on audiobook. So we've both been anticipating the release of Onyx Storm, but I've got the hard copy like coming from Amazon, I think like most, right, people do.
Mhm, mhm.
But he's just gonna download the audiobook and listen to it on his commute. So I'm like, no spoilers. Don't you
You
dare.
cannot say
Don't
anything.
Thing.
don't say a thing. I don't want to see any emotion on your face. I don't want to be able to read it. Like, don't tell me anything.
Don't come at me.
I'm gonna have to wait till the weekend to like really get into it. But he's gonna be a step ahead with the audiobook, on his commute. So it's
Oh,
just we'll
that's
see how this week goes.
that's hard too because I find so when I'm well, minus Iron Flame because I had some very intense reactions to that book. But normally, like if I'm reading, I would say I'm pretty quiet, like every now and then I don't say, but if I'm listening to an audiobook, like right now I'm listening to one and I will talk out loud in the midst. I don't know if it's just because there's like voices talking to me, but like something will happen and I just go, no, 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 no. And I'm like,
Can you please record yourself? Like one of these.
I'm just envisioning a reel of Brie.
and I'll have headphones in. And so Jared will be like, excuse me. And I'm like, I can't hear you. And he's like, right, but you're talking. So like, do you need something? Are you okay?
I want a reel of Brie being like, "No, no, 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 no," or Brie going like, "Honey," or
That's pretty much
"What
how
the
it
heck?"
well, because it's a mystery too, so, like, something will happen, and I'm like, "Oh, no, don't do that."
I love it.
My lord. That is hilarious. I love that. My gosh. Well, we will have to take our conversations for Onyx Storm off pod as we all get to experience it. I'm super excited. So, but that is not what we're here to talk about today. From Blood and Ash by Jennifer Armentrout. Emily, why don't you take it away with our pairing for this one?
So excited for this.
This is phenomenal. I was really, can I just say, I was really bummed this was not available at my local Total Wine. I
Like I okay, so listeners, I'm gonna go on a journey because this is quite, I would call it a global
take us
one.
on a journey,
Yeah, but
Emily.
this so I was sitting down on a couple days ago to think about, gosh, what pairing do we do with this story? And we'll get into the details of the story. But for those that have read the book, know that there's ascended and vampiri, right, involved, and there's a lot of blood drinking going on, and we'll leave it there, right? And so I was going through, I'll share this on video for those that see. I have this book that I actually save wine labels and like write notes. Like you can go through and see, I have all sorts of stuff shoved in here. Save wine labels of wines that I've had on various trips or to market special occasions or special wines that I want to remember.
Incredible.
It's super fun. I've been doing it for years. Now I got to get back to my page. And so I was flipping through this book for inspiration. And what I came across was this label in particular. I don't have the bottle, but this label that I had that's a Hungarian red blend that I had in Puerto Rico. I was shocked because who would expect a Hungarian red blend to be in Puerto Rico?
They're
But
not exactly close to each other.
nope, import tax is a thing. But the owners of this restaurant more Hungarian, and so they liked to showcase some of their wines, which is how I even discovered this one. And the minute I saw it in the book, I said, this is the best pairing. So what I've chosen to pair with from Blood and Ash Book 1 is a wine commonly called Hungarian's Bull's Blood, or an Efri Bikaver. Brie, I did have to YouTube how to pronounce that.
I was gonna say,
I
what's the next?
absolutely,
It's actually pronounced Peleus.
yeah, there you go, Peleus, for the love of Peleus. But
The
what
famous Hungarian Peleus wine.
there you go. Why
There's gotta be one out there.
there has to be. There has to be. Brie for Christmas this year. It's coming your way.
We'll all chip in.
So Hungarian Bull's Blood it's a red blend. And, Hungary is kind of close to Transylvania, so Dracula, there's a vampire connection there. But really where this wine came from is legend says that back in the 30s when the Ottomans invaded the castle at Efri, which is a city in Hungary, and I apologize, listeners, if I'm saying that wrong. The Hungarian general that was in charge of the army had the idea, brilliant or otherwise, we'll leave it up to you to decide, to give his troops local red wine to make them braver and stronger. Little liquid courage before the battle. And it worked. The castle was bravely defended. They defeated the Ottomans and they won that battle. But during the battle, and where this all came from, is the Ottomans, who didn't drink and were really kind of unfamiliar with wine per se at the time,
Mhm.
saw this red liquid like all over the faces of the Hungarian soldiers.
Okay.
And they assumed that they had been drinking bull's blood, the blood of the bulls that were in the castle, to give them strength for the battle,
Yeah.
which is where the wine got its name, bull's blood. And with that story, I was like, there is no better wine to pair with this book about Ascended and Vampiri and turning into a Vampiri and all of that than a Hungarian bull's blood red blend. Cheers.
Wow. Cheers. That is just I love it. I really do wanna try this one
It's hard
someday.
to find. I will say this is the one that, like, is harder to find. Go to Puerto Rico. I don't know how else,
Apparently, you know?
but
Not
it's good.
Hungary. Go to Puerto
Or
Rico.
Hungary. Go to Hungary, but it's
Well, and
really
it's
good.
funny that you mentioned that. I've been to Romania. I've been to Bucharest, and my parents have been to Budapest, but I've never been to Hungary. So I'm very oh my gosh.
If you can find it, it's really good. As I said, when we were in Puerto Rico, we ended up buying a bottle from the restaurant just to take back to the hotel, like, to have on hand. It's delicious.
Wow. Well,
That's fantastic and goes so well. Cheers to
Yeah.
cheers. I love it. Well, okay, so listeners, yes, this is obviously going to sound a little bit different from traditional narratives and nightcaps. Essentially, what we're going to be doing is diving into a little bit more of a setup or plot summary, and then we will discuss our thoughts and talk about the book. So I will give the brief plot summary here, and then we can dive into like our ratings and our overall thoughts. Should just be a given at the top, listener. Obviously, we are super duper spoiler friendly. That's right. You heard that. Not spoiler free, spoiler friendly. We are operating under the assumption you have read said book. If you have not, we will still be here when you read and then come back. So I don't think this is one you would want to ruin for yourself. That's just
no, don't
my
ruin
hot
it for
take.
yourself.
So please end here if you have not read. Come back after you have. All right, here we go. Here is the setup for From Blood and Ash. A maiden, a duty, a kingdom. From the day she was born, Poppy was chosen to bring in a new generation of second and third sons and daughters who would become known as the Ascended. Orphaned and alone, Poppy was left with no options. Bound by her obligations and duty to the kingdom of Solace, Poppy must remain chaste, pure, and adhere to a life of service, sacrifice. Escorted everywhere by her well-known guards, veiled by a mask, she does not speak or engage. She barely makes eye contact with anyone. Until Hawk, a golden-eyed guard, enters into Poppy's orbit. What Poppy once believed was a life full of nothing but serving the gods gets turned on its axis. It's clear this is only the beginning. So I left very little to I left a lot to the imagination, actually, I should say, with that setup, with that summary. So we're going to start with our ratings. I'm super curious. What did you two rate this book?
I'll jump in. I gave it a solid 4 out of 5.
You
for me.
gave it 4 out of 5?
Yep.
Okay. Okay.
So it absolutely captivated me from the start. And the cliffhanger at the end of this, like I said, I've never jumped faster into another book in a series, like, after that cliffhanger. I loved because the book is told through Poppy's point of view, right?
Mhm.
And as
Mhm.
a reader, we're kinda parachuted into, Poppy's life, and we're learning the world through her eyes, and
Mhm.
since she is this incredibly sheltered maiden, it also is kinda fun to discover the world, like, as she's discovering it.
Yes.
I think, 4 out of 5 because there were parts that I wasn't a huge fan of. I don't know, some of the world building, some of the, like we'll get into, like, I don't know, the Solus and some of the just the raw awfulness just didn't sit well with me, it was kinda hard to read. So for me, it was a 4 out of 5, but highly recommend, would encourage all to read. I thought it was a great book.
Most definitely. Okay, what about you, Bree?
I'm also landing on a 4 out of 5 for this. I was very captivated. I don't know if I was captivated right from the beginning, but pretty early on.
Mhm.
And I can share a little bit more about that. Um, I I was super intrigued by Poppy's character and like wanting to uncover what was really going on in this world. All that said, even my husband asked me, he was like, "So what's the book about?" And I was like, I don't actually, I couldn't really tell you a whole lot. Like, I can kind of give you the basics. And so with the world building, I felt a little bit confused at times. I would almost compare it to Crescent City Book 1 a little bit where you're like, "I don't really know how this
You
works."
are kinda trying to figure out what's going on the
Yeah,
first several pages, yeah.
and a part of me likes that, don't get me wrong. Like, a part of me but then another part is like, "But I really don't know what's happening." The reveal in the end, like, made all of that worth it 100%. But yeah, there were just a couple of moments that I didn't care for a ton, but overall would highly recommend, especially if you like fantasy and romantasy, and the twists and turns are well worth the read.
Agreed. We were all the same kind of across the board. I was 4 out of 5 as well, and I'm curious what was kinda missing as far as that last star is concerned, so we'll dive into that a little bit. The first thing that I thought it was really interesting to get into and talk about for a second, and we will get into that cliffhanger at the end. We'll get into some of the world building details here in a moment. I want to talk for a second about our maiden, about our protagonist, Poppy. She felt older than she actually was.
Oh, I'm
Agreed?
pretty I'm pretty sure I can't remember if it was this one, but I was talking to someone about this book and I was like, "I think she's 18 or 19 in the book because like her birthday's coming up." And I go, and I'm flat out pretending she's 25.
Same.
Like,
Yeah.
because I was like, I just cannot like mentally see her as this 18-year-old going through this. So I was like, so she's 25. We're just gonna keep her right there.
Yep.
Was that too? I'm like, my gosh.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up.
I wanted to talk about it at the top because it seems to be sort of a running thing in in the genre we're talking about in kind of fantasy, romantasy. You have these super young characters. I'm thinking, of course, of Aelin or Feyre, and I can't remember how old Bryce is, our heroine in Crescent City,
Like,
but
hmm,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, yeah. So I just thought that it was really it's interesting how these authors have like super young heroines who seem very experienced. But then as you get to know the traumatic experiences, the events that have gone on in their lives, perhaps that makes a little bit of sense. And I'll be honest, as you were doing your wine pairing, Emily, more of this world was kind of starting to come together for me when I was picturing Transylvania, castles in Budapest or Hungary, wherever. Like, I was kind of envisioning that world because you ask yourself, like, what's the time period a lot of times that like this is running in? Because you can kind of make a lot of, like, I
yeah.
don't know. I just found that interesting.
No, for me, I pictured, like, medieval kind of a
Yeah.
feel, like castles and walls and, like, and you've got the town behind a big wall, right? And
Mhm.
then you've got the road that's, like, not protected between these towns.
Yes.
I think we also shared when we were texting about this one too, the Craven, which I think
Yes.
we'll get into maybe in a bit too. I full on pictured Gollum, but a meaner, nastier, not as funny, like Gollum, like some, just a scarier version,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm. Yeah,
And I had the Aelin vibe too. I kind of pictured
I did.
like a little bit of Throne of Glass, like vibes in there.
Mhm.
I think for me, you ask about was the 1 star missing, and I think for me, it was 2 things. 1, you hit the nail on the head. She's supposed to be 18, but she's feeling 25, and that was a pretty big disconnect. Some books I have that feeling too. This one felt like there was a big disconnect there for me. And I also felt like there's a lot of story in book 1. I think the series overall ends up losing some of that story. It becomes more romance than fantasy. And I think I was missing more of the fantasy piece, which would be that other little part of the star.
Well, and maybe more of the fantasy kinda comes as the rest of the series unfolds. I know that there's a book in the series that gets a little bit more into the world building of it, but it's funny that you said that because that was a little bit of what was why I gave it 4 out of 5 as well. So, I don't know, do you have any thoughts on that too?
No, I think you guys are spot on with just a few of the things that were missing. And I do think that's a good point too, that it definitely felt like there was just something missing when it comes to the fantasy aspect. Just went a little bit too much on the romance side. Although I love talk. So I will say, I actually didn't like him at first. Like, I did not care for the red pearl scene.
I was about to bring that up, so I'm glad that you said okay, I was gonna ask because that starts it off the book pretty early, so yeah, go ahead, go into it.
So that's what I was saying, like, I didn't really initially, and I will say, like, there it was because there was, like, one line, and I don't even remember what he said, but I remember I was like, "Oh, no, don't say
It
that."
just was a turn off.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, "No, no, 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 we don't say that, please." Like, I don't like
Yeah.
that. So I had a bit of, like, an ick moment with him. He redeemed himself,
He
though,
grew on you?
he did.
Okay.
So he really did, but, like, then in the initial scene with him, I was like, "Okay, I know this book." Sorry if you heard my dog, he can't chew his food, apparently.
He was feeling the ick too. It's
He
okay.
was. Yeah, he probably remembers that moment when, but he definitely grew on me, but I didn't care for the initial start to the book, although I liked what it introduced about Poppy. Like, we immediately kind of get a feel for her rebellious nature, but I will say, like, one thing that I appreciated about her character development was that it's introduced as being rebellious, but then it really shows more, like, her curiosity, this need for strength, her history, her desire to help others. And so I loved that evolution for her and, like, getting to know her. But yeah, my initial reaction to Hawk was not the best.
Well, I have 2 responses to that one tangent. One of them is a bit of a tangent. You reminded me of how I felt when I first met my husband, actually. So, okay, no, because listen, so it was a little bit more of a slow burn for me. I was not as initially gung ho, we will say. We dated long distance. I met him virtually for the first time. Fun fact, he actually like tongue in cheek proposed on our first date. And it's one of those things where you're talking about there was a part of me that got the ick that was like, excuse me, who do you think you are? And then there was another part of me that was like, you got gumption, you got balls.
Yeah.
Sir, I can respect and admire that. So, I'm in the same camp. Initially, I didn't know what to think or how to feel about Hawk. I was like, but he grew on me pretty quickly and obviously so did my husband cuz it worked.
I'm with you. The red pearl scene I had mixed feelings about. I think the other side it showed of Poppy that kinda gets her into trouble a little bit is also her incredible she is so quick to trust. which
Yes.
comes with, I think, being obviously a sheltered maiden.
Yeah.
But in the Red Pearl scene, so she's playing cards, right, with some of the guards, and she thinks she's so suave and they don't recognize her. And then one of the and I forget, he's the commander or one that comes in that knows her really well and is kind of like a second father figure.
Victor.
Yeah, that comes in, right?
Mhm.
Comes in and she's like, "Shoot, I have to like really get out of here." And then this woman is like, "Oh, you should go to the door, sixth door on the right." And she's like, "Okay," and like bounds up the stairs and goes in.
You're like, "Ma'am, what are you thinking?"
No, that's the part where I'm going, "Okay, you really are 18, not 25." Because I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 you're just like this random woman in this tavern that is known to be not a place of upstanding reputation is telling you to just go into the sixth door on the right and you bound up there like a bunny on Easter?" Like, it was just like, I don't know, that part for me was like, "Whoa."
I'm just picturing the Easter bunny.
I mean,
Basically. Basically.
And from the jump, yeah, no, that's well, and I wanna talk about how starved for connection, community,
Mhm.
relationship that she was, right? Like that was part of this like opening scene in the Pearl and like all of these things going on. She's taking these what she considers to be calculated risks because she knows that they're meeting a need of hers, right? She's bound to this duty, like we've talked about in Listener. If you've read the book, like pretty much all of her face is covered, most of her face is covered. I almost pictured hijab style. If either of you know what the hijab is in the Muslim faith, like literally it's like just mostly your eyes that are shown, right? And like she wanted so badly to be seen and to be known and to be heard. And then who does she run into but this guard who, all
Yeah.
of a sudden is like opening up her eyes, opening up her mind, her heart to all of these experiences. And there's different parts even like in their interactions or in their relationship, bringing it back to like the age thing where you're like, oh yeah, honey, I have been there.
Yep.
Yep. I think I wrote in my notes here actually like what woman in the world cannot relate to Poppy's struggle with Hawk? The charm, the charisma, his ability just to say all the right things. I think the French consider it like the joie de vivre. I don't know if that's the right term or the right way to say it, but you get what I'm trying to say. So, anyway.
I think it was interesting though, because that scene set up like the whole rest of the book, Jordan, right? Where she
Yes.
doesn't know it's Hawk in that room,
Right, right, right.
unless I'm mistaken. But
I thought
No.
she did. I thought she did, like, I
No,
thought she
no,
recognized him because 'cause she'd, like, seen him training and stuff.
she knew him by name. Okay, so yeah, let's just go ahead and we'll kind of take the spoiler off, right? So the whole thing is the Atlanteans, and the Atlanteans follow what we know to be Prince Castile, the Dark One, right? And Hawk is a guard of the Rise, if you will, and he is supposed to be protecting from Craven, from Atlanteans, from the Dark One. And so I don't believe Poppy knew, all of that being said, I don't know that Poppy knew Hawk by name. She recognized him as a guard. Maybe she did know him by name. I'm trying.
Element, I know he didn't know her. That was clear in that scene.
Right.
Right. And
Mhm.
I think that kind of set up the rest when they meet again, which we can then dive into that.
Yeah, yeah.
The
Right.
other thing that it brought up for me, because the scene was chapters and chapters, was what I called the stream of consciousness kind of writing style. Like, I
Uh-huh.
feel like there's moments where, Poppy's in a moment in a scene, like, for example, when she and Hawk are in this room in the Red Pearl and they have, like, a romantic moment, and her mind, like, wanders sort of, like, haphazardly. Like, I don't know how else to describe it.
No, it's
My mind has never done that.
But, like, she literally, it's like, follow the ball, right?
never.
Never,
Never.
never. So that was also part of my frustration a little bit is I was like, we learn a lot through this, but also I'm like,
But also, do we learn anything?
"Did we learn anything?" Like, it kind of
I don't know that we do.
in some parts, we learn a lot, and we get a lot I will say that the positive of that is Poppy's thoughts and feelings as a character are, like, fully fleshed out.
They are.
Like,
Yes. Yes.
110%, exactly, she is a multifaceted character. The downside is that you kind of go through it and you're like, "This is not connecting." You've had 1 kiss, and we're still 3 pages.
But it was her first kiss, Emily.
I sound like an awful person when I'm saying that, but I'm like, "Honey, get back to that. Don't keep going on that." But that for me, it's a different writing style. I think as a reader going in, like, that is a style that it's not a bad one, it's just a different approach that I think
Yes.
took me a minute to get used to. That's how, from Poppy's point of view, how it kinda flows.
Yeah. No, that's such a good point. That's such a good point. And on that topic, I guess, just of characters being kind of fully developed or fully fleshed out, let's take a moment for Tawny because I loved her. I'm excited, hopefully, for more of her in the series. So, listener, Tawny is one of the ladies in wait, and she happens to be one of the only that Poppy has permission, if you will, from the Duke and Duchess, as well as from the Ascended, to be able to interact with. And there's a part of that that's a little bit challenging for Poppy as we're in Poppy's head and we're reading from her point of view. She even kind of struggles with, like, okay, Tawny is obligated to kind of be my friend. There's a little bit of like this, forced proximity somewhat too, because we'll get into a little bit of lords and ladies in wait are ones that are essentially also waiting on Poppy's ascension, and their future sort of is contingent upon their ascension, her ascension, how all of those things go. But I loved Tawny. And the interactions between Poppy and Tawny were just really, really heartwarming and really cute.
They were, I think, even as a reader, you do get a sense that she's a very genuine character despite this
Mhm.
obligation. And Poppy's sort of thoughts around that make a lot of sense. And yet you also can tell that despite all of that, she does feel like Tawny's a true friend to her.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that comes through in like her actions and
Yes.
the way that she cares for her, which I don't know that even if you were obligated, I don't know that you would behave
Mm-mm.
in that way toward another person.
Well, and we'll talk for a second about when, Poppy gets to the point where she's on her way to the Capitol and Tawny wants to go with her. She is offering herself up to go with Poppy. And Tawny's like, no, like you've got to stay behind here and make sure that things stay,
Yeah,
solid here. We'll get into that for a second, but I loved Poppy and Tawny. And I'm excited
I
for
loved
more of
him too.
Tawny.
I
Tell me
think
there's more Tawny in the series.
I'll go with I loved Tawny. I love Tawny.
I'll second that.
Yeah.
Oh.
I will say, and I'm gonna,
Okay.
awkwardly pivot because, Jordan, I don't wanna give you any spoilers because I know you're
Okay,
still reading.
a little worried. It's okay.
I
It's fine.
think it's also worth noting that because this was part of the I don't know, I would say, like, as a reader, getting up to speed on the Ascended and all of this,
Yes,
'cause one of the things that I was totally shocked by, and we're spoiler friendly, so here we go, buckle up.
bring it in.
I had no idea that this was a vampire-centric, like,
Yeah,
love
no,
Me
story.
either.
Kudos, like, Book Talk and everybody, or
no
I'm just
spoilers.
living under a rock, and I had no idea that this, like so that was epic, honestly, when
Agreed.
was revealed, and I think it's interesting because it is one of the huge points and kudos I give this book, is it is the most creative vampire-centric love story world building that I have ever read. Most creative. So,
Agreed.
right, because 'cause we've got The Ascended, which is where Poppy and everybody is right now, right? And they are the ruling class, king and queen, duke, duchess. That's why I think medieval time, right? And then
No, same. Yeah, that was my headcanon.
Yeah, and only the nobility and royalty are this ascended, capital A here. Mortals and commoners make up the rest of the caste system, and then it's, like, financial, like, you have wealthier
Mm,
and you have,
mhm.
like, merchants, right? I think what was really interesting in this part, heartbreaking, because 'cause it'll bring us to the Tulis family.
Oh, yeah, let's talk about that. That's a good segue.
To get into that too, because part of this is that the ascended are thought to be godlike, and Jordan, you mentioned this. There's a process
Mhm.
that is called the ascension, capital A, again, that one goes through, but nobody knows what it is. Nobody knows what it entails. It's just that if you're worthy, you become an ascended. If you're not, nobody hears from you. You just you there is no like that is it. And
You lose everything, basically, like, you
but no one
don't.
mentions like you die. It just is you are not worthy, period. Right? It just is like nobody knows. End of story, right? Exit stage left kind of thing. And so
Mhm.
and Poppy is the maiden is supposed to be like the most pure, have the highest calling to serve the gods. We don't know what that means, and neither does Poppy, but she spends a lot of time in her stream of consciousness, like, writing, worrying about the ascension, what that is. And she and Tawny, to go to your point, spend a lot of time as whatever, friends being like,
Well,
what do you think it is? And what is
Tawny even touches on or picks up on Poppy's lack of excitement, or even, like, she gets confused why Poppy is questioning
yeah. Like,
the as like, "Shouldn't you just be so happy and so excited you were chosen as the maiden?" And there's all of this esteem that's supposed to come from that,
yep. And
and
I think
Poppy's like, "For why? I don't I
right,
don't
which I
know."
think, Bree, to your point, highlights her curiosity, and she's, like, questioning this. Spoiler friendly, so buckle up, right? That I think, I'm just warning listeners on this one, but we learn later that the Ascended, capital A, are vampires, and the Ascension is becoming a vampire. What I found the creative part that Jennifer's put together with this is the whole religion, what feels like a religion that the Ascended built
Yes.
mortals, commoners, right, whatever, would be forced, but some are kind of excited to
Mhm.
give up their second and third sons and daughters to serve the gods. And I made a note of this that like second sons and daughters, I think I captured are given over at like 13 or
It
something. And
was
then, like,
12 or 13, between the ages of 12 and 14.
yeah,
Yeah.
and there's like, and then it's all on the right. But then third sons and daughters are given over 1 month after birth. And it's just crazy that this is like that it was a whole religion concocted around this, and these kids are never seen from again. They're just serving the gods.
And no one really questions it.
Which brings us to the Tulis family. Emily, tell the story of the Tulis family
Oh my
while
gosh,
I
okay,
sip
so
my wine and cry.
I was just gonna say maybe it was the pregnancy hormones for me, but I was a sobbing mess at this entire scene.
This one was really hard.
Sobbing mess.
No, it's like, yeah, it's like the quarterly or like biannual something. I can't remember what it's called, but where like people can come before the Duke and Duchess and essentially have an audience.
I was about to say feedback session. Can you tell that I've been working today?
It's it's not the same, but it, like, reminds me of the tithe,
Yes,
and, like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
I
know
think that
they're
that's yes.
yeah, they're not, like, technically at that moment, I don't think, unless I miss that, giving anything over, but it is, like I don't know, I know and that is a very medieval thing too, where
Wait,
they would have
they're holding court.
audiences yeah, where you could
Mhm.
essentially I think a lot of times it had to do with your ti the tithe, like, if you couldn't pay yours, but it is a lot like that where they are
That was
there
also a
before them.
time to, like, present your need, or, like,
Right.
you had an audience with a monarch or with someone
Right.
with station or with a title that was able to hear your case, if you will. So,
Yep.
yes,
So
the
the
Tulis
Tulis
family?
family that they come forward with their third son, who was born less than a month, like he's itty bitty at the time of their
Mhm.
asking for permission. And they shared, I am gonna there this whole scene is so emotional, so just but I'm gonna stick to the facts. But it was an incredibly emotional scene to read and experience, especially because we're experiencing it through Poppy's eyes, who is already questioning this world, like what's happening, right? And she seems to be, as a first person narrator, a trustworthy, logical, reasonable individual.
Yes.
Whether she's 18 or 25 is TBD, but we kind of trust her, like her, at least I did. I was like, yeah, you seem like a
No.
judge of
Yes, yes.
right and wrong,
It seems
right?
fair to be questioning this situation for
Yeah,
sure.
exactly. So the Tulis family is asking for a reprieve from the upcoming rite. And the rite is when we talk about those second sons and daughters or those third sons and daughters, like get dressed in all white and like disappear into the temple. We learn later to be eaten, but at the time, they're just serving the gods, basically. And so they have asked for a reprieve to keep their third son because their first two have just mysteriously died of a random illness. I think it was a blood illness, or they mentioned something like a
Blood
blood.
illness sounds right. Yes, it was something related.
Yep,
Yes.
yep. And they are asking to be able to keep their third son and raise their third son as their first son because their other two children have passed. And they get denied, flat out denied. I will just and then I wanna hear your guys' thoughts, but for me, because the Duchess is the one who speaks and denies this, and I was getting Hunger Game vibes. I wanted to, like, claw my way through the book and kill her myself. Like, it was one of those
That's
scenes
the mama bear in you.
where you, like, love to hate the character. You know, like
Mhm.
Umbridge in Harry Potter or the president, right, in Hunger Games, where they just say these awful things and you're like, "No, no."
Mm.
What were your thoughts on that scene?
I like the connection you made to Umbridge and to the Hunger Games. For me, yeah, it was very interesting, and you're hearing it all, you're reading it all through Poppy's lens. And what's crazy is from her perspective, from any logical, rational perspective, right? Even for Poppy goes into the situation naturally very trusting. Oh, of course, the Duke and Duchess are going to offer the exception for the Tulis family to raise their son because this is a very special case. This is a situation that doesn't always occur or that doesn't always happen. So, of course, there's going to be an exception. And when there's not, at least for me, I remember being confused, but also at the same time not surprised. I was sobbing like you. I was heartbroken and I was like, okay, this is only the beginning of things that are obviously going to progress and going to happen. And Mr. Tulis comes back into the story later, which we can dive into after Bree shares her thoughts, but it was pretty crazy.
I mean, it was tragic. To me, this was the moment. I'm trying to think if there's another, but this was like the moment for me that really you're already questioning like what is going on and that there's definitely like a sinister
Mhm.
feel even though you don't really know what it is. But it was this act and their actions and their behaviors here that like truly showed how cold and calculated they were.
Yes.
And I mean, your heart breaks for the family, but to me, this was also the moment where Poppy was like, these are the people that have been protecting me. And I mean, because she's also, close to the queen, like, she's the reason that she's the maiden. And so she, like, thinks very highly of her.
She's
And
close to the queen, she's close to the duchess, and then there's another princess. Sorry to cut you, or priestess, sorry, there was the priestess. She wasn't exactly close to,
no, but
but
she's trusted them, and this was, like,
yes.
one of the real moments that I think she was always kinda questioning and curious about what was happening, but it was, like, this moment that also showed her just how awful they can be, and I don't think she expected it from the Duchess, like, she
No.
expected it from the Duke because He
And
sucks.
that was the whole thing, was when the Duchess started speaking, first of all, she was surprised that the Duchess took initiative over the Duke, number 1. Number 2, she was surprised at the Duchess's rejection.
Yeah.
The other part that made this scene that we haven't talked about yet so well, hard to read, but was really highlighted Poppy's evolution is her ability to connect to others' emotions.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this
Talk
scene
about her senses.
this
Yes.
I'll say this scene in particular, I think just was like a great, awful, tragic, but a great moment in the book as far as like the story and her character. So one of the things that we're introduced to pretty quickly early on is that Poppy has the ability to feel pain and then take away pain through this like Jedi mind trick. It's the best thing I can come up with at the moment.
I considered a Jedi mind trick or like a heightened sort of
It's like just she just
power,
right, right. But as
but
the
it's alluded to that's why she's chosen.
correct. That's only she can do it. Like, no one else can do it, and it's only pain. It feels pretty binary, like, do they feel pain or no pain? As the book progresses, we learn that it's now she's, like, seeing a rainbow of emotion, like, she can feel
Do we think that's progressing with her and her age?
I thought so.
Her proximity to ascension?
I think so. I mean, the book sort of alludes to it too, that's
It
like
would make sense. It would make sense.
That's what I thought was kind of a coming of age moment.
Did either of you watch Charmed?
Yes,
yes,
of course.
I
We
was
Charmed.
Charmed.
I was raised on Charmed. That's my
I was
first
gonna
foray.
say that was like one of my go-to
Yeah,
shows.
exactly.
I'm
It
like
still
when
is.
I work out at the gym and they have it on TV, I'm always like, yes,
Yeah.
but like
I
I can't
haven't
let anyone know.
watched it for years, but I was picturing the healing powers
Mhm.
almost,
Yeah.
right? Or just like, I don't know.
Oh
I
my
was
gosh, what
picturing
a
something
throwback.
that I love that connection though, and I loved Charmed. Like, I just
RIP Shannon Doherty.
oh,
Sorry.
I
I
know.
know.
Man, I loved that show though.
That was great. I watch all the time.
But I appreciate this was a good way to introduce her senses and her abilities. Go ahead, Emily.
Yeah, no, because I think at this moment with the Tulis, it's not just pain that she feels, and she talks about how the emotions taste and smell, which I thought was a really clever, like,
Yes,
writing
yes.
choice, which I enjoyed. I thought it was a really good one.
It seemed like she was baffled that she was experiencing more than one as
Correct.
well, because she had only been connected to pain, physical
Right.
or
Physical pain.
emotional pain.
And now she was feeling like their love for their baby mixed
The
in
fear.
with feet like it was a very multifaceted scene, and I think because at the end of this she had to be escorted back, like she was overwhelmed because sometimes if there's too many emotions she gets overwhelmed, and I thought this was she like leveled up in her ability to read emotions, if that's the only way I could say it,
That's a good
right,
way to put it. No, that's a
in
really
this
good way to
scene.
put it, yeah.
um and then we can get into the fate of all three Tulises. um
Yeah, go ahead.
Let's get into
yeah,
how this what
spoiler
happened.
friendly, buckle up. I think this one also, it just gutted me. So you jump in, but this was when we get into we're gonna skip forward to then go back. There was an attack on the castle, right? And the Duke is murdered with
Sorry, not sorry.
sorry, not sorry, so not sorry.
Oh, kick rocks. Did I say that out loud?
Yeah,
Oh, good.
So,
cool.
sorry, really quick on that note though, like not with the Tulises, but like there are definitely some trigger warnings with this book because I was like reading this in the car at one point and I remember saying to Jared, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I hope what I think is about to happen isn't about to happen." And he was like, "What?" And I was like, "I hope that that's not what's about to go down." And it was
Well,
really
we
good.
get
So
to a
the Duke
murder
had it coming.
You mean
We get
you're talking
to a
about
murder of a lady of one of the ladies in Wait, Melissa, and Poppy is questioning all of a sudden, like, what's happening? What's going on? These things are not normal. And she has experienced abuse at the hands of the Duke, as well as at the hands of one Lord Mazine, which also not sorry to see him go.
he's like a mosquito. That's how I pictured him, like buzzing around the court of the Duke. Just like he is not a nice person. I would not have
No.
him at my Thanksgiving table, and he's a little mosquito just being awful.
Okay, but
Yeah.
back to the Tulises.
Back to
Sorry.
Julius. Sorry, no, but it was important that we'll get into the Duke's, I think, abuse, Lord Mazine's and their abuse of Poppy. But the Duke was murdered with the cane that he had been using to beat her when she was, quote, bad, quote. And I do use
Mhm.
air quotes on that. So that kind of triggered it. And then the castle is overrun by what are called dissenters, capital D
Correct.
on this, right? Who are individuals that are rebelling against the ascended and don't agree or have been enlightened or feel like they are enlightened. And they overrun the castle. And Mr. Tulis, I believe, is one of them. I'm missing some of these.
No, so yeah, that is plot twist, he was a dissenter, correct.
Or became one as a
Could
result
have become one
of
as a
the
result,
decision.
correct.
Yep,
Mhm,
yep.
mhm, mhm.
But his, yeah, he ends up trying to hurt Poppy, right? If I'm
Yeah.
not mistaken. And as a result, Hawk, who we got to jump back to tell that storyline in here, hangs him up on the wall with the others that tried to hurt her.
Yeah, at the end, after once they've left and like I will say, so that moment too when they're leaving because she's in danger, like they've had this whole attack, so it's decided she has got to go to the capital. And I will say, like from this point on to the rest of the book, like I could not stop reading because
Same.
you know something is about to go down. Like there's still a good
Oh,
chunk
yeah.
of the book left, and you're like, it's about to go down. And with Hawk like leading this to you're like what is going on, like there's more to this, where are we going? And the moment too for me it was so clear to picture it when you're reading it when the other guards that are not Hawk's friends, that everyone else is like, we've never seen these people before, like we think something's up. And she's like, no, 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 like I trust him. Like he's my guard. I trust him. And the guards are like, no, we gotta go. Like
No.
they're like, these people are missing. Things are bad because they've now made it to this like separate village on the way to the capital, which does feel very Hunger Games ish, where like
It
we're
did
headed
feel
to the
super Hunger Games.
we're heading to the capital. I loved it because I'm just like, what is going you just know. You know the moment that they like hop up on that horse and head out of town, it's about to get messy.
Yep.
Yep, it was oh my gosh. Well, and what's wild, we'll take a moment here to pay homage to Rylan and Victor, two in particular of the fallen guards, if you will, that had really, I personally felt like had Poppy's best interest. They loved her like a sister, they loved her like a daughter. They were guards that Victor was the one that taught her how to fight, made sure she was equipped with a dagger. Things that if people knew as a maiden she had the ability to do would not be okay.
Well, and if they found out he taught her, then
Exactly.
I
Right,
mean it
then it
his
was
life
his.
too. That's gonna
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know whose death I was more surprised by, Ryland's or Victor's. I was pretty taken back by both. Probably Victor's. I was
you say
more
Victor's for me. That one just
I really would have thought he would have been at least another book or 2. Like, come on.
I felt pretty early on that Jennifer was like, "Nah, sorry, that's not this story. Like
Yeah.
nobody's safe."
No. Nope. No.
Bringing
No.
it back to that Hunger Games reference when somebody there in the game,
Yeah, and you're
you're like,
like, nope, nobody's safe, really."
No.
"Right, right."
I mean, yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut
Oh,
you
and
off.
I was just say, just even like in this sort, I don't want to call it the end scene because that's not what it is. But when they've all left and like all of the guards are just killed because like Hawk's like, yeah, sorry, like they can't live. Here's the deal. And I was like, oh, like we don't want to give him a shot because I mean, technically he's trying to protect her. Do we just want to maybe like take him into the dungeon and see if he's cool? No, no, we don't want to do that. No,
I don't
okay.
want to
No,
do that.
we're
I love how you
Not
said
a
that,
no.
right? Like, can you just try the dungeon? Like, give him a week. It doesn't cost us much. Like,
just see.
just a week in the dungeon, see what he does before you do that.
Do we
Like,
want to use our words? Maybe talk about it first. Like, no, we're just
Well, let's
okay.
let's
Got it.
talk let's talk for a second about why Hawk is so few on, words then, shall we? Because he had been calculating a plan for a very, very long time.
Very Aelin style of him if we're gonna talk about, like,
Like,
Very Rowan.
I
yes.
will say, I'm gonna, this is again spoiler friendly. The minute he the minute he said Tawny couldn't go with them to the Capitol, I was like, "You are somebody else." That for me was the dead giveaway that, like, he was somebody else. So for listener, right, Hawk, we last had seen Hawk at the Red Pearl scene where he was making a romantic move, slightly maybe PG plus rated, a little more than that, PG-13 on Hawk. And then we find that her main guard, Rylan, gets killed just randomly by an arrow in the garden. Like, he's, like, there and killed, and she's attacked. So there's now a vacant opening conveniently for her head guard or primary guard or whatever you wanna call it. And Hawk, where there's some questions asked because he's young, he's fairly new to the Rise, he's a great fighter, but he's not, like, as experienced as other candidates, becomes the head of her security with Victor, like, becomes her main guard.
Hmm.
Exactly, like, suspicious. I also loved reading those scenes about him in the castle with the Duke and the Duchess, like, making those snarky comments, like, to the priestess and just being like, "I give 0 Fs," like, kind of attitude about the whole thing. It was great, and I'll say there's a few scenes where there's a lot of sexual tension, and it was a fun, like, as a
It
reader,
was great.
right,
It was
to read
fun.
through all of that.
I thought it was wonderful.
It was wonderful. We also learn because Hawk follows Poppy when the Craven attack the Duke and Duchess, Craven being Gollum, but scarier, like zombie Gollum, right?
That was really weird.
Yeah, they just come out of the woods and they're attacking and the
Out
guards
of
are
the
trying to
fog.
defend out of the fog. And she runs out in her nightgown and slippers. I'm picturing like Cinderella satin slippers and just starts like taking them off one by one, not missing a shot with a bow and arrow. Very Aelin in that
It
respect.
Say,
was
I
a
love
very
it.
Aelin
I
I
was
moment.
like,
loved it.
"Go for it, girl. You take them out. Do
You
it."
go for it. And so Hawk discovers her, and, like, that's also where we introduce, like, her ability to fight. Like, she really truly can hold her own. But, then I think this a good segue too to just what was happening with the Duke and Lord Mazine, because that was the part that really you could see Hawk was starting to care for Poppy with his reaction when he sort of uncovered what was happening. So Poppy would do something, and I do use air quotes on this bad quote, like, walk too loud,
You mean
walk too
normal?
quietly, say something, and just anything that would be triggering.
There was a scene where she was, like, talking to Tawny and another lady in wait, and it was, like, because the other lady in wait was there.
She got
Oh my gosh.
Yep, and the Duke, just sadistic is the only word I have for it, would basically what I gathered is pull her into his office, sometimes with or without Lord Mazine, like, he would join or not join,
Yep.
and strip her from the waist up and use a cane to beat her, and it was just
Do we think that there was ever any other sexual abuse, or was it just physical? I
So,
kinda started to wonder that.
I wondered it, but I I don't know if this is, like, that I need to think that it didn't happen, but I
I
also
know.
they were so fixated on her purity for Ascension purposes that
I'm
I didn't
convinced
know
I don't know that anything more I don't
would
know.
like, I don't know that they would go through with that at
That's
the
what I
risk
thought too.
of, like at the risk of messing with all that she means to the gods and the people as the maiden. But they were like, well, I would say, I don't think the Duke would. I think Lord Mazine didn't care whatsoever, and had he had more,
he would've.
he
Oh,
would,
had the
yeah.
Duke said, "Go ahead," I think that he was just a crony of the Duke.
Just,
That's what I think.
yeah,
Oh, yeah, but I think that he definitely would have, like, had they not been interrupted previously in one moment, like, I do
Yeah.
think that that could have happened. It was certainly a risk, but I Eh. It
I don't think anything for me, and again, I'm not a trauma specialist or anything like this. I Poppy seems pretty naive as you go through the rest of the series and fairly open to advances by Hawk. That I don't think anything further sexually happened abuse-wise from the Duke and Lord Mazine, because I don't think she would be reacting as she did if she had trauma from further advances.
And that was where I was also like, I don't know that it was more than
I mean, it didn't make me but it was
emotional, verbal,
awful,
physical.
like,
yeah,
Yeah.
it was
where it was.
awful as
Yeah,
it
yeah, yeah.
was.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah,
The
yeah.
fact that
Let's
she was
not
okay being touched in any way.
Anyway, and ogling, like, that was, I think, the extent of, like and it just their power over her, it was awful, and so we learn and I'm fast forwarding, I think, through this, like, there's one it's only highlighted really in one scene, so I will say, like, trigger warning on that one, but we learn later that when the attack on the castle happens and they're leaving for the capital and the duke gets killed by the cane, like, that he used, it was Hawk that did it, and
Dang
that
right it
when like
was.
Huh?
Said dang right it was.
Absolutely, it was, and that was the part that I was like, "Yes! Yes, it was." That was a good revelation for me, and I also thought it was interesting because in that battle, Victor dies horribly by the dissenters that come in, but Poppy also has a breakdown, understandably so, with Victor dying, and pretty much hacks Lord Mazine to pieces, which I was like, "You go, girl." Like,
another kind of let's channel Aelin.
I was gonna say, like, "You go, girl." Like, "You go get him." And I loved the Duchess's response. That to me, like, after the Tulis situation with the Duchess, I was like, "You are Umbridge. Like, you are like, we're gonna learn to hate you." And then we get to the scene where Poppy is pretty much ready to just fall at the Duchess's feet and, like, "Hey, you were there in the room. I killed Lord Mazine. What's my punishment?" She just had kind of accepted her fate, and the Duchess lets her off scot-free.
Right.
With simple and you just knew in that moment, and Poppy even does her stream of consciousness, like, rabbit hole situation at that moment, that the Duchess was probably also not, exempt from their activities.
Well, and Poppy has one of those thoughts too, where she's like, if he had been doing this to me,
Yep.
how could I be so foolish to think that he wouldn't be doing this to any other woman, especially his wife?
Yeah. Let's okay, not to pivot again, but let's jump back to the reveal at the end when
Yes.
they are in this village now and Poppy's guards that are actually from the Rise are wanting to escape. The ones that aren't missing are wanting to escape and they they get stopped and they're like there's no way.
Yeah, well, we come to find out towards the end, as all of this is unfolding, right, that Hawk operates by another name.
I feel like I need a drum roll. Like, I
I
need,
know.
like a radio, how, like, the radio, they have, like, a sound that goes like, "Drum roll, please." He is Tell us, Jordan.
Prince Castile,
The Dark One!
the Dark One.
What'd you guys think about that reveal?
Not see it coming. That's what I thought. What I freaking thought. First, we find out that Hawk is an Atlantean, and then we find out he's the Atlantean of all Atlanteans, the Dark One.
I love it. Bree, what were your thoughts?
I chef's kiss, as Emily would
Yeah.
say.
I love it for whatever so similarly, so, like, I definitely questioned him, I was like, "There's no way, like, there's so much more to him," but for whatever reason, I didn't even with the Dark One being mentioned, like, there were a couple of times that I was like but then I was like, "No," like, I questioned, like, if the Dark One even really existed or if this was just, like, some made up figure through time, like and so when it was revealed, oh, I was well, also with, like, how it was revealed with him saving her,
Yeah.
and even though everyone's like, "Don't save her," like, she's literally all of our problems, like, "Don't save her," and he does, and, like, it's all revealed through this I was like, it was so well done, and yet at the same time too, you're like, "Okay, but how bad is this? Because he's just offed everybody that was in the way. So, like, what does this really mean for Poppy? Obviously, he has people amongst him too that, like, they want her dead.
Mhm.
And,
Yeah.
like, how much can he and is he really willing to protect her? Even though he did, like, the unthinkable, and even his friends were like, oh, just let her go. Like,
Well, and essentially what it comes down to, so he's trying to use her as leverage, right? To get his brother back, to gain his kingdom back. All of this kind of there's more to the backstory of that we'll probably dive into as we get deeper into the series, but I thought that was really interesting as well. And he basically just takes her right into a marriage. He's like,
Well,
"We're heading off to get married."
I say he takes her into a marriage, and she is not a super willing participant.
No.
The end of book 1.
No.
Yeah.
Well, because the end of book 1 is basically like, "All right, we're ready to do this thing."
he's like, let me introduce you, my future wife. And she,
And
along with everybody, is like, what?
what?
See.
Oh my gosh. And yeah, definitely a twist I did not anticipate. Because, okay, so, and as we kind of get into end matter, we wrap things up here. We're going to get into some of our predictions, if you will. We'll enter into what I'm going to call premonitions and prose, where we just sort of talk about this is the first book in the series. So, what do we think is going to happen? All of the good stuff. But before we dive into that, I mean, so yeah, that I honestly, I had thought that he would be, I mean, we talk about Prince Castile, we talk about the Dark One. I legit thought he was serving the Dark One. I thought he was serving Prince Castile.
I think it was
The
interesting.
fact that it was him himself.
Like I said, the minute when they were like, "Tawny can't come with us," I was like, "Oh, you are up to you are something you're not." That was the giveaway for me. I was also, though, shocked because the whole book too, it talks about how Atlanteans are evil because that's the view of the Ascended, and so you're also, as a reader, going like, "Oh my gosh, she's with all these evil Atlanteans." We'll put a pin in that for book 2,
Is
but
she really?
but is she really?
We're super nice,
No,
to be
no.
fair.
No, not all of them for sure, and I think, yeah, it was like I said, other than Crescent City, the end of book 2, which we've already discussed, I have not jumped into another book in a series faster than after that cliffhanger of Castile going, "And Poppy, we're gonna get married." End of book. And I was like, "Okay, wait, download book 2, chapter 1, let's go."
What is happening?
Yeah,
Moving right along.
moving right along. I love this premonitions and prose. So what are your
Okay. Well, obviously, my thoughts, there's more portrayal to come. I'm fairly certain, though, the chemistry between Hawk or Castile and Poppy is too deep and too strong to hide. I'm pretty sure that they're endgame.
Mhm.
And I think, obviously, we're gearing up not only for like more betrayal, but for just an all out war. That's that's my headcanon.
I like it.
That's my thoughts. What about the two of you?
Bree, what do you think?
Okay, well, so obviously, I think there's like a lot more history, and in terms of like why the Ascended are the way that they are, same with the Atlanteans and the politics and all of that. I agree. I think Poppy and Kiss, like, there's no way that
I will
If
third.
we
there
know.
becomes a triangle, so help me.
Oh yeah, I don't respond well to that.
I'm not.
I don't respond well to that. But I definitely think it's going to take some time for them to work through like what was revealed in book 1, obviously, because like it's not just the betrayal, but I mean her entire life has essentially been turned upside down. So it'll be because of all of that, like it'll be really interesting to see how the push and pull kind of plays out. And then I mean, I would say like there's no way the Ascended are just going to give up so easily once they realize Poppy is like actually gone.
Right,
There's
and now that we know what they are.
Yeah, like they're not just gonna let that slide.
Nope. Nope.
No.
I will echo what you guys said. I think Castile and Poppy are throughout the series. I might riot if they are not, so I'm just gonna say that now.
I'll join that riot. That sounds good.
Yeah, they're endgame for the series. I think Castile's brother is still alive. So we'll
Solid prediction.
like I'm just gonna throw I think he's still alive. Not sure what state or what that's gonna look like, but I think he's alive. And I think Poppy's brother Ian is not actually her brother and that
We
he
didn't talk about him too much. I apologize, but he's not I mean, he's really just talked about in the book. He's not brought up so much, but I like that prediction. Go on.
Yeah, no, I think and we haven't gone into, like she has a lot of her parents were killed brutally, and only she and her brother survived. We didn't get into that. We can talk about, I think, more book 2, it'll come up. But I think that her brother, Ian, is not actually her brother, and that he has ascended, and there's a betrayal coming. In that vein, I don't have a prediction on this, but I am, like, dying to know her parents' backstory.
I know.
I am, like,
I
dying.
was curious about that too, so I'll give you that. Yeah.
Well, even her backstory, like the whole thing, her family in
How
general.
she became chosen in the first place.
Yep, and I don't have a prediction because I don't know if I have, like, enough detail to say, but there's something there, and I think there's definitely something because Poppy has been talked about as the queen's favorite, the ascended queen's favorite. There's something there. I don't know if it's a blood relation situation. I don't know if it's, like
Well, one of the head canons, Hawk, Prince Castile, mentions that she's part Atlantean, that Poppy is part Atlantean.
but it's
So I think that
not 100%.
I think that goes along with what your premonition or your prediction is.
We'll see.
I feel so out of the loop that you guys have read further along than I have. I'm like, "Oh, crap. We need to end this podcast, and then I will get to reading."
There you go. No, but it's good, but I would say 4 out of 5 stars. I loved book 1. I thought it was
Same.
great, excellent series, and would highly recommend.
I am excited to continue to dive into it even more with both of you. It's gonna be so much fun. Um, obviously, that is the very, very first series special ever of Narratives and Nightcaps, but also of 2025. Here we are. We're rolling right into it. And our next book that we will be doing in our series special, obviously, is the second book in the series, which is A Kingdom of Flesh and Fire. So be on the lookout for that. I'm so, so excited. In the meantime, of course, listener, please rate, review, subscribe. Let us know your thoughts. Are you reading along with us? Is there a series perhaps that you would suggest for the podcast? We would love to hear just if you are following along or if you have different predictions or premonitions of your own too that you would share if you've read this series. So, in the meantime, of course, like I said, follow the podcast at Narratives and Nightcaps. You can find me on Instagram. I am at Cozy Reads and Sips.
And you can find me at books.bottles.
All right. Well,
Cheers.
Cheers.
cheers, ladies. Thanks so much.